Good morning, everyone. So we are going to have a nice little chit chat with Jonathan Pohl, who is joining us. I'll be looping him in momentarily. Basically, I guess this is just a quick hello. I haven't streamed on YouTube in a little while. I miss you guys. So we're just going to go ahead and I guess jump right back into it. Just jump right back into streaming a little bit here on YouTube. So let's go ahead and loop in Jonathan Pohl. Hey, buddy. How's it going?
It's okay.
Nice. Good. All right. I'm going to go ahead and... All right. I've got the sound levels, I think, adjusted to where I want them to be. So you can speak normally. Anyway... So we had talked a little bit about the present situation, not just in California, but across America. And we were speculating a little bit about the direction that things are going now and things that we can possibly expect in the future. I guess I'd like to use that as a jumping off point because there's still a lot to discuss. Relative to those. So I guess I'll let you jump off. Do you have anything in particular that's on your mind?
It's all speculation. But it was hard to have ever conceived that we would have gotten to this point this fast. It's not that these things are totally unexpected, but the rate which they have gone since January, I think, is taken everybody by great surprise. So, now at this point, like anything is possible. So I expect it to be turned up to 11.
Yeah, because I've known about the whole Bolshevik push and whatnot for quite some time, and I knew that it was going to get bad. Same, I had absolutely no idea that it was going to get to the point they're at presently. And one of the things that we had discussed a little bit about is we all know that corporate media, they are completely going along with the BLM narrative. They are, quote, bending the knee, end quote. And it looks as though a lot of the police departments and local governments are completely in line with this, and the DNC is basically silent. They're not saying anything about any of this. When any of this is brought up, and we're referring, of course, to the riots, the burnings, the lootings, the monument destructions, so on and so forth. The incredible rise in crime to the point where now, like Los Angeles during the week of the riots, it was like a 250% increase in shootings and like an over 50% increase in murders. And this is reflected across the United States right now. It's out of control. And the most they do is they say, well, these are peaceful protesters, and this is all about racial
social
justice.
Workers, right?
What's that?
The sense of social workers, right?
Yeah, exactly, precisely. We'll get some people with clipboards to say that they're here to help us. But yeah, like it's really weird that they're all basically either silent or complicit, one or the other. And
well, I mean, that's why people bring up the model of China in the Cultural Revolution in 1966 to 1968, is that they're the very, very top, Mao Zedong and the Gang of Four and Lin Biao orchestrated the uprising from below using mostly Red Guards from students as well as lower ranks of the military against the established middle bureaucracy and educational establishment and other more sane elements of the party structure in the People's Republic of China that were not too hip on Mao going full retard.
Yeah, so it looks as though there's something like that going on here, where people are trying to remain silent because they know that they're supposed to be supporting all of this, but at the same time, like, these people, they're the professional careers as well as their safety are genuinely up for grabs, it looks like. I mean, the outrage mob, they're starting to turn on their own now. So it seems like some of these establishment elites, they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard
Yeah, but
place.
maybe it's like China in 66, 68, or the Soviet Union 37, 38. They want to get rid of that middle level. That is, the top is purging its own ranks. So, I mean, the people at the very, very top are going to be safe. The Red Guards always worship Mao. They never went after him. Lin Biao only got in trouble when he went against Mao. So, I mean, the number one dude was never in any danger.
Right, but the thing is that all of the rank and file, it seems as though they're starting to catch wind that all of this is very bad. That's the problem. Like, if you think about it think about it in terms of like three layers. You would have the apex, the people that are generally controlling the shots. Then you would have below that, like, just think about like the military. You would have like generals or whatever. Then after that, you would have mid-level management, and then after that, you would finally have the proles, all of the useful
No, you
idiots.
skipped a level.
What level did I skip?
Well, the military, you have your generals, then you have your officer corps, then you would have the NCOs, your sergeants, and a specialist, and they're really the people that keep things running on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
And then you have your privates and corporals. But if you were to take out, say, all of your non-commissioned officers, your sergeant level, right? You can see how this could benefit the people at the very top, because in terms of actual day-to-day control of the military, right? The people that are uh, the NCOs, and then also the lower ranks of the officer corps, like a captain controls the platoon directly, where a general doesn't have that type of intimate contact with the ground troops.
Okay. At the same time, though, there must be a lot of lower level people that are catching wind. Like, if the goal is to purge the middle must be aware that they are in the crosshairs, and that's what I'm referring to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, what we saw in the Soviet Union and China, because the middle is part of the establishment, their only strategy was to try and become even more loyal to the very top, as the top was using the bottom to destroy them as counter-revolutionaries.
so what do you think about the possibility that we're going to see purges of leftists? Do you think that's possible?
We're already, that's all what cancel culture is. It just hasn't yet gotten to the point of physically killing them, but removing them from jobs and whatnot, purging them out of positions of power and ability to earn money is starting to happen. But yeah, I think eventually we're going to have lynchings, the struggle sessions. There will be pogroms against certain white people.
That's a little bit worrisome. Because living in Los Angeles, like, it seems as though what they're trying to do is just create a situation where there will be absolutely zero pushback, so that they don't have to worry about, quote, counter-revolutionaries, end quote. So basically getting ahead of everything, so that when the real deal comes, there will be no one to stop them. I'm also thinking about the police officers. Police officers are being purged left and right. And who are the ones that are quitting? Who are the ones that are being squeezed? And who are the ones that are actually quitting? It's going to be white cops, which means that the only people that will be left will be those who have no reason to protect us.
Yeah, it could get very bad. No, as we discussed, I think perhaps their next step might be they're going to try and have some sort of self-administered justice against some of these police officers. So if that's, I think, one of the reasons they're overcharging them is that so that it doesn't go through the courts, and they can say the courts are white supremacist controlled and don't work, and therefore justice has to be given to the hands of the people of color themselves. So they'll have and, these kind of revolutionary tribunals to mete out justice. And we already see this in New York City, with they want to emulate the Truth and Reconciliation Committee that was in post-apartheid South Africa.
Yeah, that's really worrisome. That's really upsetting. Because I keep thinking about how because we always have this bizarre fantasy that we're going to have someone that's going to help us out. They're going to recognize our plight, and they're going to be like, "Okay, we need to put the brakes on this."
Oh, you mean my Franco Pinochet fantasy?
Yes, exactly.
Like, as I said, our best situation might be we end up with like Brazil, but it'll be far worse than actual Brazil, because we're not going to have a 1964 coup to throw the commies out.
Yeah, that's the main concern. Because right now, there's basically no one pushing up against all of this nonsense. The only people that are saying hell no are like low-level people that immediately get called Nazis and are canceled and have their lives ruined. So there's almost no incentive for anyone in a position of power to say or do anything, because they will be canceled as quickly as possible. It's a very distressing situation right now.
Right, and this is kind of what you had in China, 66 to 68, coming from the Red Guards, mobilized from the very top by Mao Zedong, and then his wife in charge of the Gang of Four, and people like Chen Boda, mayor of Beijing, and of course the head of the military, Lin Biao, the number 2 man under Mao. But what happens is, of course, as I said, the whole thing unleashed falls apart. So Lin Biao and the military essentially have to establish a garrison state. I mean, literally, military dictatorship taken to 11. Soldiers were, for 3 years, garrisoned in every factory and school in the People's Republic of China. And then, of course, by the time that ended, they had hollowed out any type of institutional support and control for the Communist Party to such an extent that capitalism was basically reclaimed by the peasants or former peasants in the village from below. So they had no way to continue to enforce socialism by 1971. So that's really where you see the end of the state control over the economy, because the Cultural Revolution between 66 and 68 and then military rule 68 to 71 basically annihilated the ability of the Communist Party to maintain control over the rural economy.
Well, that's peculiar, because the Chinese government still has basically complete control over the populace.
Of the politics.
Yeah.
They had to restore capitalism.
So it's not so much that they're a communist country, so much as they're just an authoritarian country.
Yeah, I mean, what you had was the leadership that came in the immediate post-Mao era, particularly Deng Xiaoping, were totally terrified of the chaos of the Cultural Revolution. They equated any type of protest with the chaos and anarchy of 66. So this is why in 1976, in the first Tiananmen Square protest is put down rapidly, and why they do it again, although they delay a bit, in 1989, when there's more scrutiny from the outside world. But basically, they tapped a strategy that they'll allow capitalism to uh, be reinstituted because they couldn't. Deng Xiaoping tried in '79. By that time, I mean, yeah, to force people back into the communes, and it wasn't working. So in '82, he basically gave up and said, "You can go back to the old economic ways." But the other side of the coin was that politically, the Chinese Communist Party doubled down on maintaining absolute control of the situation and not allowing anything ever like the Cultural Revolution to bubble up again.
Well, I mean, it's tempting to draw comparisons, but the thing is that the Chinese mentality seems wholly different to the
This is
Western
true.
mentality. So, as where they would tolerate things like absolute control and all this good stuff, I get the impression that it might be somewhat more difficult here in America to do the exact same thing. That's just the impression that I get, though.
This is true. But the most bizarre thing about the U.S. situation is that the demographics, because this I could see this happening when we had reached, say, a South African level of demographics, if white people were an absolute minority. But the idea that 13% of the population that is black, with the 2% Jewish allies, are going to exterminate the 65% of white people still, seems to be a long stretch. But they seem to be confident that they can do it.
And there is the real question mark, because it looks like they're going full force, like cultural revolution, and also like, I mean, it's crazy to say the two words next to each other, and clearly I don't endorse it. So now that I'm back on freaking YouTube, I'm not endorsing anything, but one can't help but notice like hard line racial tensions and animosity, and it's absolutely confusing because it's like, well, but wait, they don't have the numbers. We still outnumber everybody technically, so why would they like? It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense at all. I don't understand why they're pushing this so hard right now. Do you have any speculation on why they're going for racial animosity at this stage?
Because I think it's a weak hanging fruit. That is, you're not going to get all of the middle class, comfortably gated Democrats working in Silicon Valley and other places to go with the idea of, oh, let's institute Soviet-style socialism like existed in a period of time in the 1930s in the Soviet Union, because that would mean their wealth would be confiscated and they would be uh, greatly impoverished, right, as it was redistributed to other people. But it's pretty easy for them from their positions where they basically have instituted onto themselves already a system of apartheid to protect themselves, to say, oh yes, we should do something for the poor black people, and the poor white people should be the ones that pay for that.
Firstly, Ruiner is correct, and I'm going to stop that. Secondly, that is actually a thing that I have thought a little bit about, but maybe not enough, which is, you do seem to be correct. There does seem to be a kind of like tandem society that is guarded by private security, and they've got all the potato chips that they could possibly want, so they're fine. They're completely fine. They don't have to worry about any of this stuff. Meanwhile, we do. And you're right, it does seem completely reasonable that they could just say, oh, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and have our compounds, but for your own safety and protection, we're going to go ahead and take everything away from you guys. Also, the solution to all your woes are our communism. I mean, it does seem like that's where they're going. And it's just peculiar that, I mean, if anyone decided to notice the champagne socialists, they would be vulnerable. No one can stop people from noticing the champagne socialists, so I don't see how it's a really good stratagem that they're going for.
Well, it's not a good strategy. They're doing, as I said, what we saw in the Soviet Union in 37, 38, because that was all top down, really. There was the only bottom part was denunciation to the secret police. But in China, of course, in 66 to 68, there's mob violence from the bottom, with beatings and struggle sessions and whatnot. Is that those people that were targeted that thought themselves loyal members of the party, they just became more groveling. This getting on your knees thing, that's right out of the communist playbook. They're trying to maintain their position in the ideological establishment, that they're still loyal to the party despite being accused of the worst and most heinous counter-revolutionary crimes.
The thing that strikes me is that this could easily get so out of control that you end up like Holly Cook is here. Hey, buddy, what's going down? In Orwell's Animal Farm, there was that little incident where the geese were doing something that was against the pig establishment. And the head pig, I forget his name, the head pig, he had these dogs that he had trained to be his own loyal servants. And the geese were commanded to confess their sins, and the geese thought that they were going to be let off, and instead the dogs just ripped their throats out in front of everyone. So what everyone saw was, if you fuck up, number one, you have to apologize, and number two, you are going to be executed in front of everyone. And I suspect that this is the direction they want to go. I don't know if they're going to achieve it anytime soon, but that seems like the kind of thing that they want to go for. I mean, what was it? That one guy, the black guy, some assistant professor or something, was saying something about how...
No, he wasn't that high ranking, thank God. He was only a graduate student assistant, but yeah, University of Georgia.
The black guy, right, with the beard?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago, there was another guy from another...
There are thousands of these guys. They don't ever get reported on.
I know. Well, that's the thing. There was a guy that was saying he was Hispanic or something, and he was a radical communist, talking about his radical dialectic or whatever. I listened to a couple of lectures by the guy's fucking asshole. Anyway, at one point in one of his lectures, he said that in Haiti they massacred all of the white people, ... and that's a good thing. And I was like, holy shit, this is where these people are going, dude. And no one talked about that guy. No one freaking mentioned that dude. I remember him, but nobody else remembered. He was he was out of New York. It was some university.
I think I even did a blog post on him.
Yeah. He had
I'll link it in the chat.
Yeah. But it's like, this is where they are going. So when you talk about things like struggle sessions and moving toward admissions of guilt and then into like hardline violence, including killing, I'm like, dude,
don't ever apologize. Don't ever take the knee.
Yeah.
Because that's all stuff worse than death, right? If you'd like you at least go with dignity. Just make them shoot you as a man.
Yeah, that's actually the direction that I've decided to go. Firstly, I'm leaving Los Angeles. That's number one. Secondly, if anyone, and I mean anyone, requests or demands that I take the knee, the first thing I'm going to say is no. Not even a question in my mind. If I get shot in the back of the head right then and there, then so be it. I'm not going to play their fucking games, the end. Because I only see this as getting worse. I only see this as... increasing to the point of violence, including death. all of this
All right, so
seems like
here's the
a
exact
zero-sum
quotation.
game.
To clarify, when the whites were massacred during the Haitian Revolution, that was a good thing indeed.
Yeah,
And
see?
his name is George Sicario Mahar. So he's only
Maher?
half Spanish. Yeah, Mahar is Jewish.
Oh, Mar. Gosh. Eastern Standard Time. How could I have missed that?
Not surprising,
How could I have missed that?
because it's like so common. It's like, you see it all the time. It doesn't. When dog bites man, right? You only notice the man bites dog story.
Oh my god, I can't believe I missed that. Oh my god. Oh, wait a second. That's right, but I heard about that guy way back when I was still fairly blue pilled on the Juliet, Quebec. So I didn't really know that much
I
about
am
it.
100% blue pilled on everything. I think my actual positions on almost everything have changed very little in the last 30 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm thinking about going hardline into that myself. But then again, at some point, I'm going to be doxxed. Hopefully, I'll be out of Los Angeles. At any rate, yeah. So my concern is that all of these people, the mid-level people, they don't understand that they are advocating for something that is going to get them killed if they're not careful, and that we may not have the ability to. I mean, we can't put the brakes on this. I'm wondering if there's even any safety restraints like seatbelts at this point.
No, it does appear, because I mean, the only way they were able to do it in China was because they had a huge military that was still very loyal to Mao, particularly Lim Biao. But as we've seen, there doesn't seem to be any such leadership in the U.S. military that would be capable of suppressing the riots.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how this plays out. I'm trying to because I want to figure out stratagems, where to go, what to do, how to organize my life and whatnot. Because you wanna try to identify patterns just so that you can figure out the best
Well, you look at
course behind shit.
historically, basically the people who survive are those that tried to keep their head down, and basically were lucky enough to uh, not be killed outright. But a lot of survivors, of course, had pretty close calls. They still ended up going to labor camps, or being beaten, or being deported out to the countryside, because these actions were on such a mass scale that it was hard to avoid them.
Yeah, that's basically my thought process as well. I kind of feel like getting out to a place where there is less communist control seems to be the best direction. Seems like the best thing that you can do. Because if you're in a city, you're basically exposing yourself to these people. As where if you're in a smaller town, it's not that they don't have any tendrils everywhere, because they do have tendrils everywhere. It's just that it's harder for them to conduct these actions in smaller towns. What do you think?
Yes, obviously, for a number of reasons, it's more difficult uh, for them to do it. First of all, demographics, both the BLM shock troops, who are mostly black, and the Antifa shock troops, who appear to be disproportionately echoing, are urban based. So in the countryside, less likely to have as many of those people as opposed to a more European demographic, and that alone is a big help.
I'm actually starting to see that it looks like they might be trying to collapse I mean, they basically have already collapsed the economy. Not 100%, there's still there's a little bit of activity right now, but my expectation is that they want to go for like hard line revolution, which is so much easier if you've got everyone poor, hungry, and afraid. So my thinking is that even if you go to one of these smaller towns,
I don't know if that's true. I mean, in China, in the Cultural Revolution, it became the idea that the last area of strength of the bourgeoisie was culture, that was where they were most rooted in, and therefore had to be rooted out. But the economy had already been taken over, of course, by the Chinese Communist Party many years before, so they weren't worried about that. And the destruction of the economy was something that was kind of a not even a consideration. It was like, the important thing is the permanent revolution, and of course Mao and his people around him, they're not going to have to worry about poverty. We see the billionaires get richer and richer in the U.S. no matter what happens. So I don't even think it's a consideration. They're thinking that the Cultural Revolution is the absolute most important, and they just don't care that it destroys the real productive economy because they're going to be filthy rich no matter what happens.
fair enough. And now that you mention it, it does seem as though, thinking about it, yeah, that does seem to be the case. They're going after all of those monuments right now. So, and the monuments, they don't care that X person fought against slavery. They don't care that Y person was not even American, Gandhi in this case. And it looks like they're doing this.
Gandhi wrote derogatory words about black people while he was in South Africa.
Oh, I remember. I've read them.
So
So it looks as though this is just an outright cultural thing. You're right. I think you're right, that is to say. So yeah,
yeah, because look at the way the fucked up Khmer Rouge style communism we're getting diverged from the more rational Soviet style communism. Who are the people that are cited and are influential in the United States? Antonio Gramsci. Why Mussolini didn't have that guy tortured to death immediately, I don't know. It seems to be one of the greatest failings of fascism that Gramsci was allowed to write his prison notebooks in Italian prison. So, were all those people that think fascism was a solution, Mussolini, a pussy, didn't kill one of the worst people possible. Second, Marcuse, whom the United States let in as a quote-unquote refugee from Nazi Germany, who basically developed the strategy in 1965 onward when he trained Angela Davis at University of California, San Diego. And then he was I guess he ended his career at University of California, Santa Cruz, where, believe it or not, you know what he was teaching right before he died at UCSC? Holocaust history courses.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But anyways, he was the one who said that the white working class was never going to lead any type of Marxist revolution because they had been co-opted by the capitalist system, that the labor unions had struck deals that basically made them comfortable enough that they weren't going to overthrow the system, so that the revolution had to be led by the lumpen proletariat, racial minorities, sexual minorities. So he was the one who introduced for the first time, homosexuals and transsexuals being revolutionaries. So this, you can see, this doesn't have much to do with economics or the working class or means of production at all, like Marx and Lenin and Stalin were focusing on. We're now like China in the Cultural Revolution, or Cambodia in 1975 to 1979, right? Cambodia, they send all the urban population out in the countryside. The factories are abandoned on day one of the revolution.
Well, if that's the case, then we can hobble along in terms of raw economy, but they're just going to take down our ability to. They will do what they can to eliminate any possible resistance to their program.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, we have to see, but it doesn't ever repeat itself directly, but if possible, there could be a number of years where it's just this chaos, where they just hobble the police and any type of military or law enforcement response, and the police and military only used against people that attempt to push back and organize against it. So if you have 2 years of Minneapolis and Atlanta and Philadelphia, and it will go to probably more middle-sized cities, but any city with a large African American population being burned down, the exhaustion of that to the population as a whole is going to be pretty great.
What do you think may happen after? Because at some point, people are just going to get sick of all of their businesses getting burned and looted. So, like, there has to be pushback. So, what happens during the pushback? I mean, because I kind of agree that we're probably going to see this level of agitation for quite some time. I think this is going to be a long-term problem. I think it's going to be a chronic condition.
In China, the pushback was kind of clever. They organized themselves as "quote unquote" Red Guards that were, and accused the original Red Guards of being counter-revolutionaries and went to attack them.
Hmm.
And that's why the Chinese government had to call out the military against these new Red Guard units.
That's funny. Because I remember thinking to myself, there's no way that I could do this for a lot of reasons. But I remember thinking to myself, well, geez, I mean, if we're going to go hardline into this, then maybe I should just join the commies. Once you join the commies, a lot of options open up for you. You can start throwing bricks into the machine work very quickly, and there's not much they can do about it.
Right. So that's exactly what happened. Right. The people that were opposed to the Red Guard organized themselves as Red Guard units and accused the original Red Guards of being counter-revolutionaries that were. They even had a term. It was like apparently extreme leftist, but in fact extreme rightist was the translation from the Chinese.
Wait, what was the translation again?
The English is apparently extreme leftist, but in fact extreme rightist.
That's so funny. That takes so long to say, doesn't it?
I think in Chinese it's probably just like one syllable, but who knows?
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, because, I mean, if you think about the direction that things are going right now, the only possibility is to hide under cover, under the cover of their own systems. Like, what other options do we have? I can't think of any at all. I can't think of any options that are acceptable.
But you could go like Germany and have the equivalent of Freikorps units, or what Italy did with the Squadistri. Although, as I pointed out, Mussolini's pushiness got us Gramsci, and that's why we're in the problem we are today. Bad fascists did not execute enough people.
Well, that's the problem, is that no one's pushing back at all. So if no one's pushing back, then by default what you end up with is a runaway train doing its own thing, and the best, because if there is no other competing system, if there's no competing anything, you basically have to split the system and use it to your own effect. So why not infiltrate and just become a part of that, rather adopt the tools of that system to attack the system itself?
Right. That's exactly what happened in China.
I don't. Well, but I mean, for what's going on here, I mean, my God. If no one's going to push back against all of this, I can honestly see some people just deciding, fuck it, I may as well just join them and start assembling, like, lists or whatever, or like finding ways to commandeer equipment and resources.
We're already kind of seeing this intellectually, because it makes sense that you go after them as being even counter-revolutionaries themselves. If you look on Twitter, the whole thing about Yale and Harvard and the relationship to the slave trade.
Yeah.
Right. So.
My favorite is New York. Apparently, the Duke of York, he was huge into the slave trade. So New York, the city of New York, is actually based, or it's named after a guy that was big on the slave trade. God, it would be beautiful to accuse New York Jews of being in on.
So they're gonna have to change the name to New Lagos.
Anything, I don't care. I just like the idea of accusing New York, echo quotes, as being.
True, but Lord York himself was English.
So that doesn't matter. The point is to attack the people that are in New York now. You're thinking logically. Who cares about logic right now? This is about attacking.
That's why we're in trouble. White people think logically, and now we're fucked.
Exactly. Well, basically, yeah. They're using irrational thought patterns against us. So, like, in some peculiar way, it makes sense to simply use their own illogical patterns against them and just say, okay, fine. You want to go in this direction, we'll go in this direction, but be forewarned. This is how it ends. I mean, if they're going to go after all of our things, then, I mean, my gosh. And this is how it starts, too. This is exactly how it starts. You immediately say to yourself, fine, you want to come after my big things, my things that I love? Well, I'm going to go after the things that you love, too. I mean, isn't that horrible? I'm basically, like, I'm kind of already there right now. Isn't that terrible?
They're gonna name New York after Lizzo.
After who?
Lizzo, that big fat woman.
Oh, yeah. I like how she played, like, 2 notes on a flute, and everyone treated it like it was the most amazing thing they'd ever heard in their life. And it's like, you're fucking kidding me. It's ridiculous.
I'm waiting for them to cancel Jethro Tull, because it's all British influence and not any African influence in their music, or not enough African influence.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be everything at some point. Like, all of it has to go. And anything that has European roots has to go. The what is it? Lord of the Rings movie or TV series?
Mm-hmm.
In my head, I keep thinking to myself, okay, so Gandalf is black, the elves are Korean, the hobbits are Mexicans. It just goes on. Like, Gollum is going to be a transsexual.
I don't know if you ever watch any of the. My mother watches these mystery shows on PBS that are produced by BBC.
Yeah.
And they have these quotas. So there's like this one that takes place in Canada in the 1920s. Now, Canada in the 1920s is like 98% white, right? And the majority of the actors are black, Indian, Pakistani. It was like the first half of the show, there was like one white person. It's supposed to be some, part of Toronto in 1923 or so.
No, I know. There was this one that I was watching with Dennis Quaid, and it took me because I knew where the show was supposed to take place when I first started watching it, but then I forgot. And at one point, like several episodes in, I was like, what the, where? I think the name of the show was like Fortitude or whatever. Not a very good show, but whatever, it doesn't matter. At one point, I was trying to figure out where the show took place, and there were all these characters from all these weird places, and I was like, get the fuck out of here, man. They had like Russians and Irish people and Americans, and there's like some black people that spoke whatever language that they were speaking in what was supposed to be the locale of the television show. It took me, this is not a joke, it took me several episodes before I finally caught on, oh, this is supposed to be taking place in Finland. Okay. Because
Finland?
Yeah, I couldn't get a gauge on it because they were basically mishmashing. Like the difference between Los Angeles and that show in terms of demographics was zero. Absolutely fucking zero. And this is what they're doing for like all television shows right now. Like you cannot tell the difference between Los Angeles and any other city. It's impossible. I was watching some footage of like some black people beating up a white chick, and it, like, as I was watching it, it just struck me. I have no idea where this incident is taking place. There's no indicator of the location. This incident could have happened in Paris. It could have happened in any major city in Europe or America, or even Australia at this point.
Well, I don't know any major city in Europe. I was in Moscow in 2019, and it was still overwhelmingly Russian. And some groups that you couldn't tell, like the cab driver that took me from the airport to my hotel was Armenian, but I only knew that because he told me. Otherwise, he looked the same as the Russian. But you saw almost no Africans. There were some Central Asians working in coffee shops and cafeterias. And there was a very, very, very small, I mean, we're talking like half a block, Chinatown. And I did see one group of Hasidic Jews. But for the most part, it was pretty much a homogenous Russian-speaking, Russian ethnically population.
I'm jealous.
And I think I only saw 2 or 3 homeless people in this. I was in the center of the city, not too far from the Kremlin. So it was pretty, and I didn't see any graffiti.
Oh my god, I would take that in a heartbeat. I would prefer...
And it was safe to walk at night. I mean...
Oh my god.
I walked from... back from maybe 3 miles from Red Square to my hotel at night. No problem. Well lit.
I would take a bunch of drunken Ruskies doing God knows what weird
There's nobody
antics.
drinking on the street. They've gotten rid of all that.
Nice.
The only drinking that takes place in central Moscow now is in bars and restaurants.
Oh, God,
and it's
that sounds
mostly
beautiful.
beer and wine. I didn't see any drunkenness.
That sounds fantastic.
They have developed a big coffee culture. You see a lot of people drinking coffee now. But no, I didn't see any drinking on the street. It was all confined to...
Oh, that's right. The drinking... I remember hearing about how a lot of people that were under communist rule, they took to the bottle because everything was just so depressing. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Well, it was in the immediate post-communist period under Yeltsin when everybody had no money, starving to death under the great glories of neoliberal capitalism that the Echo people had bought them.
Yeah.
But it's much better now under Putin, at least in central Moscow. So I did not see any drunkenness. There wasn't drinking on the street. But you saw with people in cafes and bars generally drinking beer or wine. So it's much more, I guess, the European model there. So much less abusive and not nearly as unaesthetic.
That sounds lovely.
It was quite nice.
Oh my god, I'm so jealous. Alright, so, but coming back to America for just a moment, Incidentally, I've only got like another 15 minutes or so.
No
Actually,
problem.
yeah, about 15 minutes before I have to take off. I'm just letting you know so that when I rudely and abruptly stop the stream, it won't be too shocking or surprising. At any rate, so with regards to America, my thinking is that, like, I want to imagine that the energy is just going to peter out, but it looks like they're doing everything they can to keep the energy going. So I don't think that there's going to be a return to normality, because everyone is talking about how they want everything to return to normality. This is what the people on the news say. They're constantly saying that Joe Biden is a return to normality, and that's what everyone wants, or whatever. As though Trump is the reason that all of this is going on. And I don't think there's going to be even if Biden were to be elected, which I don't think is going to happen. Even if Biden were to be elected, I don't see any kind of a return to normality. Instead, what I see is just a continuation of this that basically just gets progressively worse until you end up with a reaction. And I think that reaction, I was talking about this with you the other day. I still think that we are being goaded into a reaction, and that this reaction is going to be used as a pretext for further
Yeah, but see,
attacks.
I don't see the reaction coming, because there doesn't seem to be anybody stupid enough. I mean, the Phoebe keep poking the poor Pepe with the sharpened stick, but the Pepe is not moving.
No, I know. It's really weird. But at some point there has to be a breaking point. I mean, you can't just keep burning people's businesses down. You can't keep toppling their monuments. You can't keep attacking because they're talking about, like, ruining the lives of the children of racists now. And of course, who is a racist? Anyone that they disagree with is a racist, which means that if you disagree with them and you happen to have kids, your kids are now fair game. So now you can't disagree with them.
My kids aren't white.
Right, but not keeping in mind. Yes, good for you, but what about everybody else? What about the rest of us?
I don't know. And who knows if that'll even be enough, because obviously they're half white.
Exactly. So they're still half evil, and this is the problem. It just doesn't stop. I don't see any way to stop this, because once they start going after kids, which I genuinely assume is going to start. I mean, it already kind of is happening. I've seen tons of cell phone footage.
Yeah, well, this happened in the communist bloc too.
Yeah.
So I mean, the initial deportations of kulaks in 1930 were whole families, men, women, children, uprooted and exiled, and then more close to what we have starting in 37 with the Koreans, but probably for our purposes the closest example of what happened to the Germans in 41. Again, it was the entire population.
How do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Can you explain?
The Soviet deportation of ethno-racial groups into Kazakhstan and Siberia. So they've round up everybody who was a member of that particular group.
Well, but they're not doing that here.
Not yet. But see, the reason it's so odd, and the only thing I can really think of that even kind of bears close resemblance is in the early 70s, 72, the Tutsi minority, about 15%, was ruling over Burundi. And they went on this rampage, and they slaughtered like 200,000 of the Hutu majority, and so that's where you have an example of a small minority going after majority population to genocide it. But it's not very common, because if you think about it, okay, you're 15%, you're going to kill the 65% of the population. That seems bad odds.
Well, and this is why I'm so confused, because for the moment, and I stress for the moment, we have demographics in our favor, and we're also armed presently. This is going to change. We all know that there's going to be red flag laws across the country. Everyone's going to be red flagged. Anyone that disagrees will be red flagged. So it's just what's going to happen. I recognize that, I understand it, but we're not there yet. My concern is that they're going to move in that direction. But I mean, I don't know, man. Like,
Yeah, but here's the kind of kicker. While we still have the majority, both in terms of kind of the top heaviness in terms of numbers, older people, but even more ideologically. So my brother is like drunk the Kool-Aid, and he's like 5 years younger than me, so he's about your age. But while we were talking outside that Stater Brothers, that old woman who must have been close to 80, she agreed with us completely, just over here.
yeah. No, I know. It's so frustrating. I can't, because once the boomers die out, like, a lot of the pro-white sentiment goes away. A lot of the latent pro-white sentiment goes away. The people that would have defended the Bill of Rights.
That's right. And it's interesting. It's not only the white population and the boomers, whatever you say, are more based, but where you have any allies of color is also among that demographic. So, for instance, people that are second and third generation Japanese Americans tend to be quite pro-white, but the younger groups of people are not.
Man, I'm really bummed out about that topic.
So as you see, like the radicals, like look at the age of these Antifa guys. They're not our age. They're like half our age.
Yeah. I'm just going to do something real fast, legit, in just 1 second. I have to mute you to do one single action. I'll be done in legitimately like 5 seconds, starting right now. All right, I'm done. I just wanted to do one single thing. Somebody was asking about a link to the song. I just wanted to deboomer tech while I do that. So.
Are you gonna link to Wild Cherries? Play that funky music, white boy.
Yeah, there you go. Harbor Freight was asking for a link to a track. There's the link to the track. At any rate, I don't know, man. Like the whole camp thing. I mean, is that even possible right now? Like, I don't see how that's possible. I don't see how they can start rounding people up just yet. I know that they're going for the whole, everyone's a Nazi.
We'll see,
I get that, but I mean,
2 or 3 months from now, we're gonna be probably. Who knows what will happen?
The problem is that they're just declaring everyone a Nazi. So you can't just say everyone's a Nazi. We're going to start rounding up Nazis. And put all the Nazis in camp when, like, anyone can be declared a Nazi. It's like, that just doesn't make any sense. That does not compute.
You can make the whole country into a camp like the Khmer Rouge did in Cambodia. One giant forced labor camp. We'll all be out in the countryside being re-educated growing rice.
I see armed insurgency if that happens.
And then, well, there weren't in Cambodia. What happened in Cambodia is eventually foreign power intervened. So once they kill 75% of the population of the United States, the Mexicans will just walk in. As bad as their army is, it's not that bad.
They can't kill 75% of the population. That's impossible.
When there's no food, it will be very fast.
Well, I have heard of food shortages coming up. I mean, do you think that the pending food shortages are going to be enough to starve people out?
I don't know, but I mean, uh, it's hard to predict these things, but I mean, the Great Leap Forward in China was uh, disruptive enough between 58 and 63 that 45 million people starved to death. So even in a country the size of China, that's still like 10% of their population at the time.
I mean, I can see like 2 to 5% of the population starving because of food shortages. I think that it would be in largely non-white communities. I think the whites would be, I don't want to say unaffected, but they'd be less affected. That's my assumption. So, I don't know, man.
It's hard to say. It just, I mean, but if you had told me while I was in Kurdistan, which was not that long ago, that you're going to come to the United States and there's going to be everybody's going to be on house arrest for 3 months because a virus that is less likely to kill you than the common flu. And then afterwards, we're going to let there be riots. There's going to be no police and military. In fact, we're going to eliminate the police in all the big cities after the riots burn down Minneapolis and Philadelphia and Atlanta. I would say, dude, man, put down the crack pipe.
No,
But
fair enough, fair
it
enough.
happened.
I would have said the same thing. I mean, my gosh, I every so often I think to myself, I bought a silly little 22 plinker just on a lark. I was like, no, I've got the money. I'm gonna get a plinker. I'm just gonna call it a day and let that be my.
Save one bullet for yourself.
Yeah, dude, settle down, man.
I'm just giving you good advice.
No, it's not good. It's terrible advice. I'm getting the fuck out of Los Angeles because I don't want to be thinking like that. But like, if you had told me that my little plinker is actually going to be like a legitimately useful tool in an absolute worst case scenario, I would have been like, well, I mean, technically that's why I'm getting it, but whatever. Meanwhile, 2020 rolls around.
Yeah, it's as I said, we're into the parts of weeks, but I am guessing that if any of the 4 policemen, but especially the white guy in Minneapolis get off, or the guy in Atlanta gets off, that we might see attempt to lynch them of the killings of a police officer. I said this kind of samosud, to use the Russian term.
What does Samosud stand for?
Self-justice.
Hmm. Like when when that woman confronted one of the police officers in like a Walmart. Did you see that video?
No.
Okay, one of the police officers that was present for the George Floyd incident, he was at a store just shopping or whatever, and this chick, like, she video recorded him on her phone, and she was like, "How dare you go about your business like we don't know who you are?" And she was basically just giving him veiled threats and saying that he has no business being out in public, like it's normal. And I was like, dude, this is how it starts, man. People just getting up into other people's business and saying, you don't get to have a normal life if I don't like you. I mean, that's dark. We're moving into dark territory at that point.
Yeah, well, it's collapsed very fast. I mean, it's one of the things, you expect that the eating away, right, will continue at the same rate, right? You're slowly eroding away. So, but at a certain point, you've eroded away so much that what's left is too weak to hold it up, so it just snaps.
Yeah, that's that's what I'm genuinely thinking, that the actual breaking point is going to be Trump's re-election. That's my real concern. I think that all of this is to rile people up into voting against Trump. And I think, of course, they're going to try to rig the elections so that they can just say, "Oh, finally, we defeated Trump," or whatever. But I think he's going to.
That seems kind of self-defeating because the elections are pretty worthless. If anything, this has proved that real power has nothing to do with the president and the
Oh, no, no, no.
Congress. That real power is in other institutions.
No, no. To the choir you preach, I completely concur. But this is not about using logic and rational thinking.
I am being white again.
Yeah, you need to think in their terms. They want the show. They want the spectacle. They want the spectacle to match up to their rhetoric.
No, that is very Maoist. The megalomania, having 12 million red guards salute you on Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, and if they don't salute, you gotta start cracking some fucking skulls. The problem is that people aren't saluting. That's the problem. So my concern is that we're going to see an election take place and not enough people salute, and then they're going to lose their collective mind. That's what I think is going to happen.
Hey. Yeah. Could be.
So yeah,
It
sure.
does seem grim.
What's that?
It does seem kind of grim.
Yeah. These people have already burned cities, looted things. I mean, my God, you go to Santa Monica, it's like 10% of it is open now. 10% of Santa Monica is open. Now, the economic collapse was already going to happen. We all knew this. But only 10% of it is open now. I mean, you remember that one chick at the watch store? I was looking at, I wanted to take a look at Seiko 5s, just regular Seiko 5. And she was practically begging me to come back, saying that, you know, they're going to come back.
Oh, you're talking about the one over in El Toro?
Yeah.
The Asian woman?
Yeah, and she wanted me to come back.
Yeah, but because nobody's going to buy anything
exactly.
since COVID.
Exactly, precisely.
Anything that's non-essential, and generally a watch would be non-essential, it's basically been indefinitely delayed.
That sucks, man. I wish I had enough to blow on a Hamilton khaki.
So I mean, you're gonna see. I think you're gonna see a lot of shops like that are run by individual proprietors or families that just go completely under, and not just shops, but a lot of the restaurants, cafes.
Yeah,
they'll go belly up too.
No, I totally agree. I look at some of the shops around me, and I'm stunned at how many of them are still open for business. And partly because I look around and I'm like, dude, so many of these used to be open. They're gone. Just gone. Stores that I would walk past maybe 8 months ago vanished.
Well, the bookstore we went to in the mall, I thought for sure it was going to be killed by COVID. But I've come to the conclusion that the woman that was there, she's usually not working. There was a younger woman, I think it's her daughter. I think they'd just done as a hobby. That she had extra money and she wanted to run a bookstore as a kind of something to do.
Yeah.
It's probably a tax write-off that makes it economically viable, but I don't think it's making a profit.
Yeah. That makes sense. I get that. Yeah, I knew some people that had a business that looked like it was just a giant sink to hide money. And they operated the thing.
Well, I don't think it's laundering money. I think it's a way to avoid paying taxes on some sort of accumulated wealth.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. It's just about the time when I need to start getting ready to let out.
Okay. And if you don't have another show ever, we'll compose a song for you.
Okay. All right. Keep my memory alive.
Yeah.
No, I kind of want to do some more streaming.
We're gonna do a statue, but it'll just be pulled down. So.
Yeah, I know. No, don't do a statue. No, if anything, compose like poetry or something. it's easier to remember a poem. Make it like as few lines as possible. Maybe like a single verse, so like 4
Like
lines or
roses
something.
are red, violets are blue.
Yeah.
Eki, they got to you too.
Yeah, maybe something a little less, downlifting, but yeah, sure. It sounds fine.
No, King Kush, the Spectrum Center was not looted.
No, no. Yeah, farther south, it's not quite as bad. The demographics far enough south in California are actually pretty decent still, but only in certain areas.
We have basically, we're still, I don't know, but we don't have a lot of black people. We have minorities are either Latino or there's a lot of Asians.
I was noticing a lot of new Americans there.
Latinos, yes.
What's that?
Latinos?
Yes, and
Yeah.
also, as it turns out, Tom Anderson is kind of right. Like, America really is a mulatto factory, so looks like there's a fair amount of that going along as well. Rough business, man.
I'm not so sure because a lot of the further south Latinos from south of Mexico,
Yeah.
they're pretty dark, but it's not because of African, it's because of Indio, admixture.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, I'm going to let out.
Alright.
Thank you for popping by.
Oh, no problem. I'm gonna go eat lunch.
Yeah, yeah.
Take one day at a time.
We should talk about the latest developments next week, because it seems like every week.
But everything we just said here will be irrelevant because it'll be superseded.
Precisely.
Right now we're like 66 of the Cultural Revolution, and next week we'll be like in 1972.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for all we know, it will. Oh God, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Who knows what's gonna happen next week? These days, almost nothing surprises me. Okay, Jonathan.
All right, I'll see you.
Okay, cheers, buddy.
Ciao.
We're going to cycle over. Okay, he popped out. We're gonna go back to the main for the moment. And thank you everybody for popping by. No, I can't do an album. I did an album earlier, and I've got to get going. Like, I've got some proper errands that I must run, things that I absolutely have to do. So sorry, Tom Anderson. But yeah, thank you everybody for popping by. Stay safe out there. There's legitimately some very upsetting things that are in the works right now. And even though I'm not convinced that we're going to see things like camps or anything, in the back of my head, I'm like, well, I don't know, man. It's not without precedent, so who even knows? So, yeah, just keep your head low, stay safe. And with that, remember to floss. Flossing is very important. And also read Galatians and get woke. And yeah, I guess that about does it. Alright guys, stay safe. Cheers.